Good morning. Hey, Markus. Let's wait some minutes. I think we might be a smaller round today. Let's see. But we can give you maybe the rights. Teresa's coming. Morning, Teresa. Charlo, if you want, you can give everybody the rights. Turn on the cameras if they want.
Yeah.
Turn on the sound if you want. I think we are a smaller group today, so we can make it interactive. Morning, Jan.
Morning.
Okay, looking to the time, even if we are a smaller round this morning, I would say we can start. And with our session today, I'm more than happy to welcome everyone to maybe one of the most important webinars for HR at these times. And I'm more than happy to have a real expert today here with Gaurav, our Chief Security Officer at Sortify. So whenever companies, when sales want to sign with clients, Gaurav is always involved at the point when there are Excel files with plenty of questions. I think Gaurav, the record was 300 questions or something like this, a very long Excel file. And Gaurav always supports and makes sure internally with the IT team, with the data science team, with the sales team, that we can deliver compliant solutions to HR. So whenever HR decides, hey, we want to use AI, we want to use Sortify solution for our recruitment processes, for our development processes, that HR can make it. Yeah, so that's always our ambition. Then when HR decides, hey, we would like to use it, that we bring everything to the table, that we are compliant with GDPR, with EU AI Act, with ISO standards, with everything. So, and therefore, I'm more than happy to have you here today, Gaurav. It's really fantastic. And I guarantee everybody in the call today that you will take away a lot of very practical insights, real cases. And with this, I hand over to you, Gaurav. Two informations beforehand. We will record the session. Yeah. And second, we would allow you, if you want, switch on your cameras, switch on your mic if you want. I think we are a group where we can easily discuss. If you don't feel comfortable, make use of the chat, ask whenever you have questions, and we will try to answer everything what is asked. So with this, I hand over to you, Gaurav, and thank you very much for everyone who joined today.
Thank you so much, Flo. Happy to be here. And just to set the record straight, it was 388 questions, the longest DD that we have ever answered. And yeah, welcome everyone. So as Flo said, we are a small round here. We intend to make it more interactive. So please feel free to use the chat. If you want to speak up, unmute yourself, speak up. I have a deck. Is my deck visible now?
Yes.
All
we
right.
see your screen. Perfect.
All right. So how to adopt AI in HR without breaking the law? A bit of background about myself. I come from 15 years of working in industry. About 10 of them come from working in security. Started my career as an ethical hacker, where I was given systems to hack, break, and then report bugs. And now I'm happy here working with Sortify, close to 3.5 years now. Right now, working as CISO at Sortify, working very closely with Flo and Jan in sales, and also working with many CHROs and HRs for delivering compliance reports, due diligences. And we start off with a question to the group, a trivia about a real case study. So this case study comes from, I think, a company based in US called iTutor Group. Now, this is one topic which is very close to HR when it comes to AI due diligence, bias in AI. So this company was using a recruitment software which automatically rejected a certain demography of female and male candidates, females 55 plus years of age and males 60 plus years of age. They went to a lawsuit, resulted in a fine eventually. So my question to the group, what would you have done differently? So imagine you using a recruitment software. You use some kind of software which uses AI in the background. There's EU AI Act. There is a real threat of bias now, with the EOAI Act in place or your own HR practices, what would you have done differently, given that this software would still automatically reject candidates above a certain demography? How would you prevent this? Any thoughts, any comments?
I mean, if I can say something to that,
Mm-hmm,
so I would say, in our opinion, we have also, let's say, experienced this in the past.
mm-hmm,
And let's say one of our first measures to get rid of such results is that for the first, let's say, screenings, we checked if the screening was done correctly.
mm-hmm,
So let's say we only opted or we tried it first with a first job, and then of course put some effort in it in order to check it up, in order to see how the algorithm works and if, let's say, the parameters that we used and we defined are correct.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so you would see the parameters, if they are correct parameters defined, you would do some kind of monitoring, some kind of analysis of the software if it is working in the intended motives.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Was
mhm.
kind of course, time consuming at the beginning, but at least we are sure that it works properly and as we
Okay.
intended. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts from anyone else in the group? And also feel free to write something in chat or speak up.
Yes, maybe I can say something. So, from our side, we definitely are trying to look for softwares that don't automatically reject.
Mm-hmm,
So, maybe they can do some decision, but then we would need, as recruiters, to always check if we can actually reject or not, to ensure that such things don't happen. That is kind of our strategy, I guess,
yeah.
just to ensure that there's not this kind of automatically rejected situation.
Hmm. Okay, great. So yeah, this question gives me a sense that I'm already speaking to experts in the group. So this also gives me some hint on how I want to take the PPT forward. And rightly said, both of you, human oversight. So this is the section here. I'll quickly jump into the next slide. So human oversight. So in your case, you said you would be monitoring a few parameters. You would be looking that it doesn't automatically reject. If it rejects, you would try to tweak this setting. You would try to tweak parameters, and that is spot on. This is how you would prevent bias. Every AI is biased in one way or the other. The bias can be low, the bias can be high, but since it is trained on some kind of data set, a small bias will always be there. And EU AI Act, it is actually built on a very rock solid foundation. These six pillars. One of them is very important, called human oversight. Mandatory human oversight will prevent this kind of discriminatory behavior. And now coming back very quickly to the only informational slide I have in this deck, a very small deck. Six pillars of EU AI Act. And maybe we can also interact. I would also like to learn more from your experience how you deal on these topics. Before that, a quick walkthrough. First thing that we ask any kind of vendor when we are onboarding them is compliance talks. I get asked many times, what are your technical and organizational measures, TOMs? And I would say this first point, asking detailed technical documentation and technical and organizational measures on how you are complying with UAI Act forms, I would say more than 60% of the whole exercise. You ask them what kind of measures you are taking, how you are taking, what is stakeholder chain, if you have any kind of documentation that they can provide you when you're onboarding this AI. And this also helps you with a lot of detailed questionnaire. So as I mentioned, as Flo was also mentioning, this 388 questions questionnaire, due diligence, Excel, this doesn't make sense in these days. You just ask them what are the TOMs. You have all the AIs in the world to feed those documents. If those documents are not sensitive, like in our case, they are not very sensitive, they are internal documents, but there are some information like we are ISO 27001 compliant, which can be shared with an AI system which you are using internally, not to be shared published publicly, but you can give it to maybe ChatGPT, ask them that, hey, you know what, have a look at this document, give me some questions to ask them. And you don't send a lot of questions, big TDs to your vendors. This saves a lot of time on both ends. Technical limits. This is something that is not being asked a lot to us. I'm not very sure to other vendors, but this is also one of the pillars which should be taken care of when you're onboarding vendors. Technical limits. I'll give you an example. ChatGPT. You must have heard of these these cases in US where some kind of advice was given to people who were below adult age, and this led to suicides. This led to harm being done. Earlier, if you have used ChatGPT 2 years back, there were no disclaimers that this is not a medical advice. ChatGPT is not a psychologist. Now it has started saying these things. So these are some technical limits of a system. ChatGPT can never replace, I won't say never. Right now, it can't replace a doctor. It can't replace a psychologist. It requires training. Even though it can pass a medical exam, you will always see in ChatGPT, this is not a medical advice. It would go beyond. It would also say it is not a financial advice when it would ask, when you would ask it, which are the stocks you should be investing in. So these are some technical limitations of a system. If you see Zortify's manual, it will always say that it is not a clinical diagnosis. It is not a psychological diagnosis. It is more about personality traits that helps HR make decisions around themes which are recruitment. So these are some technical limitations of AI. You must always ask, what are the limitations? Transparency. Transparency, you should always ask the vendor, how are you disclosing the use of AI in the whole user journey of the candidate or the end beneficiary or the end user? If there is something sensitive like AI models are being trained, it should be disclosed at the right moment. How the data is being used, it should be transparent. You can take things from GDPR in this sense. How transparent we were in GDPR, I think this is one of the section which has been almost directly adopted from GDPR legislation. I won't go into legal terms, but in terms of practice, it's almost the same. You need to be transparent how you're using data when you're using GDPR. In terms of AI, you need to be transparent on the use of AI to the end candidates. Now, at this point, I would again like to take a pause. We have covered three pillars. I would like to hear your thoughts, any best practices that you would like to share with us and the group from which we can learn, or maybe any incident, any onboarding experience that you have had. Okay. If there's nothing, maybe we can jump onto this human oversight point. So human oversight, as we have discussed, there is always supposed to be a human in the loop. If you have a human in the loop, it always prevents AI being rogue, AI taking decisions on its own. We have seen an example. You already have some best practices insights, so I will just jump through it. I will go to privacy alignment. Now, this is also something that is not asked often in due diligences, how you are handling data when you are training the system, how you are handling data after it has been fed into the system, if you're using anonymized data, how you're using anonymized data. Now in Sortify, what we have done is we have made a white paper which tells about how we anonymize data, how we handle data, the data life cycle. And anytime there is one question around it, if we have to submit some documentation to work council, we always submit this document. This document has answers to most of the questions on the data retention part. It is also very important when you are deleting data, if you are using anonymized data for training AI models, which is something you should be asking your vendors. If you're training data, is it anonymized? Are you redacting all the private information from the data? Are you also redacting information when you're using pseudo anonymization? There's some topic that I won't go into detail right now because this is one of the least asked questions during DDs. But the fourth one, GPAI, this is a little fresh topic. GPAI, so maybe a quick trivia. Anyone knows about GPAI code of practice that EU released during Q1 and Q2 this year?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, so it is called General Purpose AI. So EU Commission released certain directives during the start of this year. So this topic particularly hits chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any kind of chatbot that you are developing in-house that is supposed to answer certain queries in certain domains. Now, if you are developing these kind of chatbots, which many of the companies are doing in-house, many of the startups are also doing in-house, then you need to look at this GPAI code of practice alignment. Now, this is something that you need to declare from your side proactively, let's say to the candidates, to the end users who are using such kind of chatbots, how you are training data, what is your data source, what kind of measures you are having so that the chatbot does only the things that are intended for it. So let's suppose you are making a chatbot that answers HR queries, which many of the companies are doing these days. So an employee can go to it and ask it, hey, you know what, this is my performance evaluation. What am I supposed to do? How will it impact my career journey? And the chatbot answers a few things to this query. Now, this is a general purpose AI. This is not a very specific AI like Sortify, which does assessments of personality traits. With this, you can interact, you can ask open-ended questions, and you can get answers. This will fall under GPAI code of practice. Here, ideally, you should be disclosing to your end employee that my data source is the internal company database, the number of queries that has been generated over last 10 years, the answers that have been generated. I have a database of them. These answers have been vetted by experienced and expert HRs or domain experts. And then we have make a filter of the data. We have trained our AI, and this AI has this accuracy in delivering answer to you. If you feel that the answers are not very accurate, like if you have only trained it on 1,000 question and answer database, then you need to disclose it that the accuracy might be 60 or 70%, or you should direct them to an expert at the end of the chat. So the whole purpose is keeping people safe, keeping people informed when they are using this GP AI systems. Also, to make them aware that they shouldn't be asking questions like, hey, you know what, I'm going to fly to Canary Islands. Is this a good price for the ticket? And then they get some bad answer that, yeah, go ahead and book it. And then they end up in some financial loss. Just to give you an example, which is very different from what this GPI system should supposed to work in this particular case of HR system. Okay, we have seen this case study. I have one more. case study. So chatbot hallucination. So I think I have not mentioned the company here, but this was Air Canada. Okay, you see it in the source. So it was Air Canada. So Air Canada has a bot which actually thought of a scenario which it told to the end users that, hey, you can have a refund. In this case, people applied for refund. The company said that, hey, you know what, we are not responsible. The bot gave wrong information. It went to court. It was something in, I think, 2024. Last year, the tribunal ruled that Air Canada is liable. It should be paying a fine. So chatbot hallucinated in this case, and the company said we are not responsible. The chatbot is responsible. Which of these six pillars you think of EU AI Act would have prevented this kind of issue in happening in the first place?
You can also type it in the chat if you feel more comfortable, but otherwise, more than happy to unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah, and take a guess. I won't say there is no right or wrong answer because there is a right answer.
Uh, I would have said technical limits,
Mm-hmm. Okay, of
um, but it's just a guess. Yeah.
course. Why would you say it as technical limits?
Why?
Yeah, why? Or let me frame it this way. What would you have done? So you say that, hey, you know what, this chatbot has its own limitations.
Yeah.
Now the event still happened, but you were prevented from the liability because you did something from your end. So you know that it is limited. What would you have done there as an HR?
Um, I mean, for me, it's always important that, let's say, I would have maybe configured the chatbot in a sense that if it doesn't have the right or 100% answer, that it doesn't generate any kind of hallucinating answers. So
Hmm.
meaning that um, it's maybe a bit similar. We are trying to set up an HR agent within our
Mhm.
company
Mhm.
to get answers to employees of internal questions. And there we are focusing on, let's say, giving, yeah, maybe it's then also not technical limitations, but let's say general limitations to generating answers.
Okay.
Mm, so, mm,
Mm.
yeah, setting up some rules that if AI doesn't know or the chatbot doesn't know, that it should not generate any kind of answer, just to generate an answer. So that's maybe,
Yeah,
yeah, how I would describe it.
that's a good point and a good way, of course. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. So this makes me actually think there are no right or wrong answers. In fact, you might be able to use these technical limits and reconfigure it. I was also saying in the context of the event happening in the first place. So the chatbot hallucinates, you can't prevent it. This event still happened. People already applied for refund. The case went to tribunal. What would you have done? So there is one way in which you can prevent the event from happening. It's by tweaking the parameters. The one way which can also prevent the liability on the company, the event happens anyways, is transparency. So you always put a disclaimer over there, which you would have already seen coming up, popping up in many chatbots and many AI systems, during the chat, before the chat, during terms and condition, but mostly during the chat, that these are the limitations. This bot can hallucinate. This bot is supposed to give you answer in this way, or at the end, very safely divert the person to an expert. So transparency is one way in which we can prevent liabilities. When I am talking to experts, I always share the practice that we have inside Zortify. It is by having the right practices, the right parameters in the first place to prevent this from happening, and also preventing the liability, keeping the user informed. And it's not just about fine, it's also keeping the user informed. So in this case, how would it have spawned differently if Air Canada was transparent? If Air Canada was transparent, if it had put the right disclaimers in the first place, the users before applying for refund, they would have either reconsidered it or talk to someone, or maybe during the whole process question this whole policy itself. Am I applying for the right refund or not? And also it gives it gives the company a chance to defend itself by saying that we were always also thinking about the end user, not just about preventing a fine from our side, but also to deliver things in a fast way by using a chatbot, which of course reduces time, and also taking care of the interest of our passengers. It's not just about preventing fine, it's also about their interest. And this is just one example. I mean, hallucination is something which we have been seeing since so long. We know about it. There are going to be so many cases which we are not aware of. In the end, it might not be possible to prevent each of these events from happening, but awareness might be the key. It's the same case like phishing. People keep on sending even Flow some emails from time to time that I am an employee of Zotify. Hey Flow, can you transfer me some money? Now, this is something that we can't prevent totally. Even we have the best systems in place, but awareness is the key to prevent these things.
And it works. So no one transferred me money until now.
Yes, it works. Awareness works better.
Uh,
It's not saying that we shouldn't be tweaking parameters, but yeah, awareness works. That brings me to the end of my session. If you have any thoughts, any special practices, any feedback to share, or Flow, if you want to share anything.
yeah, maybe open around. Yeah. So what questions do you have? What are the points that you would like to address, better understand? From my point, what I see is really that some companies, especially from an HR side, that somehow a bit hesitate, yeah, to really introduce AI into their core processes, because as Gov, I think, very good illustrated, is that there are more stakeholders than involved. Yeah, so we all know GDPR topics. Yeah, we are used to this now. If we are active in Germany, there are kind of works councils very active, yeah, that ask questions. But what we see now is more that the legal part, yeah, dealing with the EU AI Act, but some companies also have AI committees. Yeah, we know this from a big international bank. They send us to their whole international AI committee, sending these long DD documents. So it needs a bit more internal effort, yeah, so to ask the right questions, to get all the stakeholders involved. But the good point is that it's possible, so that it leads to the point that there is a compliant use of AI, what leads to higher acceptance internally of the organization. Because if colleagues feel, oh, okay, I'm not sure, can I use it, should I not use it, can I talk about it, how transparent can we be with this, especially in selecting processes, that is something what we see, that it's more an advantage at the end of the day, if you run through all these processes and get the check or checking the boxes. Also in regards of communicating with candidates in recruitment processes, etc. So that is a big learning from my side, that there is this initial hesitation. Should I invest all the time bringing? When should I bring which stakeholder to the table? I think here the white paper is very helpful. What we conducted, sharing also information. At what stage does it make sense to bring what stakeholder to the table? What questions do they normally have that you can already anticipate a bit and make their life easier? So there's always our goal to make your life easy, that you can make it easy to your stakeholders. But what are your questions? Something special from your side?
I mean, one thing that pops up in my mind is that also, let's say, um, from a perspective, from an HR perspective, what I always think is that I link it with change management because AI is something new, and
Mhm.
let's say, in my opinion, your first shot needs to be needs to be good in order that people are, let's say, have a positive feedback from using the AI and the tool itself in order to, let's say, also then increase the use afterwards. And that's why most of the cases, and I see ourselves as well in that situation, we are reluctant and we are a bit hesitating to launch it wide array and want to be sure that it is launched in a proper way in order that, yeah, you don't need a second or third start because it makes it then afterwards even harder to, let's say, that people use it internally. I'm talking about internal, let's say, AI.
Mhm.
For external, difficult to give any kind of concrete feedback on that because we're trying to limit it as well at the moment. So
Mhm.
do you also maybe experienced other customers, clients, partners that are in the same situation that internally as well they are a bit reluctant or hesitating?
You mentioned that you focus more internal AI, so that means you build your own AI systems, or I'm not 100% sure if I
Yeah,
completely understood the
some
question.
agents, yes. So you can always train agents in order to, let's say, use it internally for maybe limiting overflow of emails, questions that could be answered
Mm-hmm.
by an AI tool. For example,
Mm.
if we speak more concretely, for example, I don't know, some kind of questions about contracts, travel policies, whatsoever that
Yeah,
can be answered by an AI
yeah,
tool.
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's say that is something at the moment where we think that it could help in order to prevent unnecessary, yeah,
Mhm.
communication.
Hmm. So if I
Yeah.
get your question right, so you are talking about internal adoption of AI. There is some reluctancy around usage of AI tools for whatever reasons. So you are trying to avoid the second or the third start, and how can we have a good hit rate in the first launch? And you asked that if Zortify has faced some kind of reluctancy from clients in adopting some kind of barriers. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Well
Mm.
reformulated, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
So I can maybe start from my perspective, from what I perceive from clients at the moment, and then go off. More than happy if you jump in. So what I see is what you described is the question of efficiency and automation. Yeah, that is the first thing
Mhm.
what comes for a lot of clients in their mind when talking about AI. Yeah, AI taking over redundant work processes. As you described, if there's a question for how is our travel policy look like, or how can I hand in my documents, or handing in documents,
Yeah.
or whatever. Um, and that is something where we immediately see, okay, there's from an efficiency standpoint a huge potential where we normally would invest human time. Yeah. So and that is also something what is, let's say, easier to start for a lot of companies, because it is not, and that is something what we see, for example, in the Gartner hype cycle, what is so-called decision intelligence. Yeah, um, that means in this case, it's the decision is not that impactful. Yeah. So if there's if you submit a document for your travels, etc., and if it takes a bit longer, or if there's a question back, etc., okay. Yeah. But what we see, and that is where what Gorov also mentioned, talking about EU AI Act. Yeah. what we are doing is declared as high risk, because there is a big impact behind. So at the end of the day, what we are doing is we support you in taking better decisions at the end of the day. And that is something that changes the core processes, what are normally declared as complete human. So, and there we see that is something where HR in a first step sometimes said, okay, but what is at the end of the day our job? And I think that Gaurav explained this quite well. So the final decision is always the human in the loop. That there's this human oversight, the human decision making. But it changes the way how we, for example, analyze candidates. Yes, absolutely. And here we see that that means that you change the core processes, for example, in selection processes. And that is not like, okay, adding a tool. It's like, okay, adding maybe the whole funnel, the whole life cycle. And that takes a bit more time because it changes your normal behavior, your routines. And here we see that companies need some more arguments to say it like this, also to sell it internally. And that is something what we experience, most of the companies said, oh yeah, we are kind of okay in recruiting. But if you then really look at the fluctuation numbers or look at the numbers of your mishires, even if it's a small amount, the costs are so high already that if you could save some percentage of this, it's a very straightforward return of invest what you normally see. But that is something, it's people take it more, I would describe it like this, more personally. If we say, hey, look, there's a high number of mishires, then HR maybe is a bit more resistant, because at the end of the day they fear, okay, was it our mistake? What's not the case? But that is something where we see that as the UAI describes it, high risk means high impact. So you really have impact on the business at the end of the day, and also on the lives of the individual ones. And there we see that HR has really a huge chance to really change it.
Thank you for your insights.
Yeah, and thanks, Flo, for sharing from the client perspective. Maybe I can also share my experience internally with Zortify. So I'm also a big fan of using these AI tools whenever and wherever we can use to increase efficiency. And as you mentioned, Daniel, you have also been trying to push some agents inside. So sometime back, we made an AI policy on how to use AI tools, particularly the coding tools, the command line tools that we have for development work in a very compliant way. And how I see this process is making people a part of the whole onboarding, and even before onboarding, during creation process. So we made some meetings with the team. We asked their feedback. We made a small pilot that during this pilot, you will be giving feedback to improve the system. This is not a launch. You are being part of the whole creation process. And that's where we saw that many people who were not using the AI tools, they're coding by hand mostly, they become more open to adopting these tools. This led to some increase in efficiency. We also, for the management at the end, did some kind of objective analysis, like for Flow. So the end budget would go to Flow, and then he needs to pass the budget. So I need to have some kind of good objective matrix so that I have budget for all of these tools, which don't come cheap. So we made all of the people who were part of this AI coding tool onboarding and pilot process to write how they feel their efficiency increased, maybe make an estimate towards percentage so that we can translate to some kind of monetary benefits. The participants also felt good. They felt that they were part of creating something for Flow, and the management. They also felt good that they are sponsoring something which would be of use. And in the end, now we are using a higher rate of adoption in first go with launch of these tools. So just some small experience from my side to share.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Questions from the other ones? Anything you would like to know?
Or you would like for us to learn from your experience? These sessions are always very informative.
Maybe I can ask something, because we are
Sure.
very much in the starting phases of implementing AI tools. And one thing I'm curious about is regarding the transparency part, because we won't use such a chatbot, at least for now, but we would use AI in other ways in the recruiting process. How can we disclose this in the best way? Do you have some best practices, examples, or some suggestions? Because we are also curious a bit about that.
Mm, yes. So ideally, the disclosure must be made at the first touch point of the person using this chatbot. So maybe you want your employees to use this chatbot. So right before they're using this chatbot, it should be very clear in a way in which is not very big. There are a few paragraphs which tells them what data you are using for this chatbot, where the vendor has come in, where the data is going to reside, and also try to incorporate the privacy policy of the vendor and show it over there. I mean, this would be the most transparent thing that you can do at this point. Also, if you are going for a very soft launch inside, you are not going for a wider rollout throughout the company. Maybe you want to test it out with a few groups. It would also be ideal to send them across this privacy policy in advance via email, not even before they test this chatbot, and ask their feedback. We have seen that there are no special guidelines for transparency. There's something very good in GDPR, which was also carried into AOI Act. They stop short of prescribing the exact way in which you should be transparent. They won't tell you that you should be putting banners or you should be sending emails. They let it to your own imagination to implement it the right way. So a lot of times it will also depend on the context you are using it. But I would say if it's a chatbot, always think of the first touch point. If you explain to them in a very concise manner in which it is very clear and transparent, include things like will your data be used in AI training or not, how the vendor is going to use it, will they use it or your company going to use it or not, make it very clear, put it right there, ask them to read it. They can't move forward before they agree to this thing in first registration, and later you can always say that okay, this information was shown to them.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
It is also maybe from our perspective that is asked from a lot of clients. So how do we ensure, or how can they ensure when using, for example, Sortify solutions in their selection processes, that it's quite clear the moment you, for example, send out an invite to do the analysis with us, it's very clear, explained in the first step already, okay, this will be AI driven. Yeah, so the text answers you will providing, the open text answers that you will answering, they will be analyzed by an AI to measure the different psychological dimension. So it's very transparent from the first step, and also having then in the privacy policies clearly stated, okay, what is the data used for? Where is it going? Incorporating Gaurav, please correct me. Incorporating also privacy policies
Yes.
from client sides, yeah, because that is always the part. If you integrate AI providers in your processes, you have to make sure that you be transparent on your privacy policy plus on the privacy policy of the vendor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for bringing this up, Flo. Maybe very quickly, I can also share one example of the best practice that I have seen when we were working with a client, which is an investment bank, a European one. And if you jumble the words, maybe you can figure out, reverse engineer the client. But how they did this transparency practice inside their company was they modified their privacy policy. They added components from our side. We worked very closely with them for a couple of weeks to formalize this privacy policy. Before the launch of the tool, they sent this new privacy policy to everyone who was going to use the tool. And then there was no checkbox over there. They made it very clear that we are going to use this tool. Please read this through. And this, I would say, is something that takes time, but highly recommended approach to being transparent by sending a mail with a very clear intention, letting people know. You can include limitations over there. You can include if you are going to use AI training over there. And this is something that serves like hitting two targets with the same arrow or multiple targets with the same arrow. You can You can tackle all the 6 pillars if you want, just with transparency itself, just by being open candidates. And the best way is sending across something over email before the launch. The most acceptable way is the first hit point, you mentioned some terms and conditions, you ask them to agree to it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, welcome.
Some more questions? Something you would like to know? Sharing some best practices from DD questions. Gaurav, maybe from your perspective. So what are the common questions that most companies really ask at the end of the day? This we don't have to go to all these almost 400 questions that we received from this one client, but what is let's say the questions that also you as HR have to make sure that they are asked. I think that is
Yeah.
the most important.
Yes. Yes. So in terms of the regular due diligence, there are like hundreds of questions, but I would only touch those which touch EU AI Act. Uh, the first question that I get asked a lot is around technical and organizational measures. What are the TOMs? What are some practices that we have? Even before I get asked this question, I have one document that you are also aware of. Flow, Jan, you also send this across. We send this document on the best practices and the TOMs that we have. One of the most asked questions is on bias. How do you prevent bias? This question is so sensitive that even after answering this, we need to get on calls with legal and AI teams inside the companies. I try to pull in people from the labs team, and then we answer this question: how do we prevent bias inside our own systems? Then there are questions around training. Do we use data for training? Do we anonymize data? What are our data deletion life cycle? Do we keep logs when we are using this AI system? This is also something very important, which is being asked separately, even after asking the technical and organizational measures. So there's one company with which we sent across the data, our white paper on how we save data and process data. Even then, the AI team came back and asked, okay, we need more details on how the logs are generated, because these logs are really important. And we are not talking about the general login logs or logout logs. We're talking about AI logs. How and when AI is coming into picture, when it is processing things, when it is stopping and falling short of making some automated decisions. And the last one, most important, how do you ensure that human is there in the whole loop? Which I think sales team must have also encountered. You must have encountered with clients. How is human in the loop? And then there are things like what when can we do in terms of privacy policy from your side, from our side, so that we are compliant with EU AI Act, which is again a very important pillar.
Yeah, and maybe one point is that's the AI literacy. Yeah, so how do we ensure that the users at the end of the day, and that is in most cases, it's the HR, it's the recruiters, but also at some points hiring managers know how to use the solutions, yeah, and be able, if for example candidates ask, yeah, so to really be able to answer these questions. And that is something what we ensure by certifying our clients, with open certification courses, with in-house certifications, so that you really learn how is the AI working. So how does the AI at the end of the day analyzing the open text answers? For sure, it's not necessary, to dive that much in to say, okay, that are the weights of the AI, that are kind of these technical biases. So biases in algorithms is a bit different than biases that we have as humans. So to really understand how is the technology working, but on a level that is explainable, that is understandable at the end of the day for the candidates. That is the most important part. And that is something where we, from our side, see ourselves also in kind of an educational role. So really to help you to learn about AI, to learn about how is machine working, neural networks working, etc. Because at the end of the day, that is something what we are very clear and convinced It will not get less AI in the work context. It's getting more and more. Yeah, and you better understand how it is working. You better can understand what are the opportunities and what are also the limitations at the end of the day. And you get a badge, yeah, that you can
Yeah.
put in your profiles, and everybody knows, okay, you are able to work with AI in an ethical way, in a technical correct way, and with AI made in the EU. I think that is also something what we learn, Gorav.
Yes.
That more and more companies are getting more aware where's the data going. Especially we are working with sensitive data. That's absolutely clear. And we see from our perspective, and I really underestimated this when we started Sortify. Since we are doing psychological diagnostic, we have to fulfill all these psychological criteria. Yeah? Is it valid? Is it reliable? Is it objective what we are doing? So we had to document from the first day on, where's the data coming from? How is it analyzed? How is it maybe how is the AI trained? What data sets do we have? What are the sample groups that we're using? Do we have consent that we can work with this data? Yeah. So everything we had to set up from the early days. Yeah. What now the AI Act requires at the end of the day. And one of the big learnings for me is, and we are mostly in the European mid-market sector, that the question is always, okay, where's the data going? Yeah, is the data, is the text, is the answers from the candidates analyzed by one of the big US players in the market? And the clear answer is no. It's an AI that is developed in Europe for the European context, so also with European data, and that it's a big difference than saying, okay, we just build something on a ChatGPT model, yeah, because there's complete different data in the background. And that is something what we learn from our side. This question always comes, yeah, and I really underestimated this. And at the end of the day, we are in a lucky position to be a European company and to present and to offer a really European solution to the companies here in Europe. Yeah, that's a big differentiator at the end of the day, and that makes it also for HR internally much easier than saying, okay, we are bringing one of the big US players in and let them analyze maybe the most sensitive data of our employees or our candidates. More questions? Something, Jennifer or Anna Katharina, something from your side?
Hi, yes, sorry for being late to join the webinar, but I had really difficulties with the link, so apologies.
Yeah, sorry then from our side. It's maybe the
Um,
hardest door today.
yeah. No, sorry, maybe I missed, so sorry to ask, but maybe I missed that point. I would be interested in knowing that, because if you use the AI software from another distributor, then you usually do not have to fulfill certain requirements if you're just the user. But if you modify the AI,
Yeah.
then you become sort of the creator. So
Yes.
what are the implications there, and what is, with regard to due diligence questions, what is asked there?
So you are saying that you take a system from the vendor and modify the parameters, or you take something off the shelf from the market and then build your own, like a chatbot, something.
Yeah, both basically,
Okay.
because I heard that maybe you use like a software and you just put your
Yeah.
company
Company,
stamp
yeah.
on that, and then
Mhm.
you could
Mhm.
be regarded to be
Okay.
the creator.
Okay, got it. So there's something like white labeling. So you take something from a vendor and then you modify it, you white
Yeah.
label it. It seems that the vendor is no longer involved. My take on this would be that the vendor is still involved unless you have taken something like an open source from the market. So my next question to you is, are you in a contract with the vendor, or you have taken something from the market and changed or white labeled it?
Um, no, I have the scenario that you actually have a contract with the vendor,
Okay.
but you modify it
Modified
to
it.
use it for your specific case, or
Okay.
you just put the company stamp on it and,
Okay, got
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
co-design, so to say.
Okay. Okay. So then my take on this would be that the vendor is still liable. You are still the deployer unless there are core modifications to the AI systems in which it works, which would be very similar to changing the whole system in the AI system in the first place. If you are changing parameters on top of it, just like Daniel was telling in the beginning, I would be able to change a few parameters and then make it more compliant or make it more customizable to my use case. The vendor under contract is still a vendor and you are still a deployer. So it would it would it would remain to be seen to which extent you change the AI. But now I would assume that it's the vendor. And then we have a white paper there where it is clearly mentioned what are the duties of the vendor, what are the duties of you as a deployer. You can always see the duties of the vendor and see if you have breached any of these responsibilities from their side and did modification in their segments. If you have done this, then maybe adopt the practice that the vendor would suppose to do to you. Like, let's say if you are taking data from the middle and you are doing some AI training by anonymizing data. Now, here in this case, the vendor is supposed to make a claim that if they're using AI for training or not. But if you're also taking some data, then you also need to make a disclaimer, some transparency, some notice during the usage of the chatbot. So you see your list, you see a vendor's list. If you have breached any of those, you make a change or modification there in terms of your practice. Or you, in this case, it would still be the vendor who would take care of most of things. You were trying to say?
Yeah, so we had an event with one of your colleagues, yeah, from another law firm, and there was exactly the discussion, yeah. So from what moment on will I be treated as a provider, yeah? So and the moment you will be considered as a provider is when you modify the AI software in a way that affects the functioning, yeah, and then make it available to others. Yeah, so even if it's like as an API or an integrated feature or as a service that you offer, yeah. And here we talk especially about kind of substantial modifications. So it's kind of if you are retraining or fine tuning a model, yeah. So that is already counted as that you will be later on a provider. Yeah, if you combine it with other models so that it becomes a new AI model. Yeah, or if you are changing, for example, risk-related parameters or kind of the core logic of the original product, yeah, or if you're using it maybe for a new intended purpose, yeah, so that it is not originally covered by the provider. So so that is maybe something what you should be really aware of. So if you say, hey, I white label the solution, yeah, and you offer it to your clients at the end of the day, that is also a point where you really should double check if you are the provider. Yeah, so that is we experience this very often. That companies ask, hey, can you make your solution white label, and can we maybe change questions within your system? Yeah. Technically, yes, but we would not recommend it because then at the end of the day, you will be the provider of the solution. And that means that you have to also make sure that everything is in line with these DD questions, that you are able to answer all the questions later on, that you really mitigate all the risks that come with this into the game. So that is always the question, and we see it in the market, especially building, for example, chatbots, yeah, saying, yeah, we use maybe this tool and build our own chatbot and offering it maybe externally, then you are a provider, yeah, and that means that you have to fulfill all these criteria at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Thank you. But so if you use just the software internally for your company, then you would say you're not a provider, or that does not, even if you modify, that would not make you a provider.
Yeah.
That's a that's a good question. So it really
No,
is the
I don't. Actually, I
yeah.
don't know.
Mm.
I'm just curious because that's obvious. That's sometimes the questions that clients ask us, and
Mm.
of course we also don't know
I think
what to
that's
say.
so
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 yeah,
giving you a question that lawyers normally give from case to case, or it depends.
yeah,
That's what I learned. What
yeah,
lawyers always say, it depends. Yeah, and it depends on what does the modification look like. Yeah, so what
yeah.
are you really changing? Yeah, and there I would say there is not this one yes or no question.
Mhm.
It really depends.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
having this in mind, and as Gaurav said, we are more than happy to provide this this checklist. And there is,
Yeah.
I think, kind of clear regulations about this, where you can say, okay, and yes, you have to always then double check, or in the individual case, check what criteria are you fulfilling in this specific case and what not. So, and that is something we mentioned this in the beginning, that leads to the point, and Daniel also described it, and Teresa, yeah, what sometimes leads to the point that HR hesitates, yeah, because you're not 100% sure and you don't want to do something wrong, yeah, because at the end of the day, if you have to take the responsibility for it, and not knowing doesn't prevent you, yeah, that's the classical point. So there we recommend, look for vendors, look for providers that did their homework, yeah, and where you can really rely on at the end of the day. But thank you for this question. That's very good.
Thank you.
Something else? Otherwise, I would say we are at the end of our session. Thank you everyone for participating today, and make it an interactive session, even if it was a very exclusive session today. I hope the others didn't have a problem to enter the webinar, but we can check this again. We will provide you with all the documents afterwards, and more than happy if you reach out for more questions. So whenever there's something, please don't hesitate to come back to us. And beside this, have a fantastic Friday, a great weekend. And Gaurav, thank you very much for taking this time again. And that is also the way how he leads or supports our clients when they send 383 DD questions, and we answer them for you. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
It's been nice
Thank
interacting
you.
with you. Thank
Have
you.
a nice
Good day.
day.
Bye.
Good day. Bye.
Bye bye.